So starting off, we have a science fiction horror film, a science fiction art house horror film from 1973, and tonight's movie is a adaptation of the ever so classic Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but with a very unique twist. And tonight's movie is Flesh for Frankenstein. As I said, I have the VHS of it. And it says right here, the goriest, sexiest Frankenstein ever. This VHS tape's nearly 25 years old. So this movie is about the Baron Frankenstein, who lives with his Baroness, who happens to be his sister, and he had children with them, and he dreams of creating a super race of artificial humans, and he builds like a female monster, and then out of body parts, and then he needs like a male monster in order for him to have sex with her, for them to create a master race of Frankensteins. It doesn't make much sense. It sounds very weird, and it just sounds like something right up my alley. So yeah, without further ado, let's check out Flesh for Frankenstein. So the movie opens up with some very nice, like, eerie kind of music playing over the credits as a spider kind of slowly comes down onto the lens of the camera. We then realize that it's the bedroom of both of the children in the film, and they have like medical equipment in their room, and their room looks like a fucking some kind of like cross between a mad scientist's laboratory and a dungeon. And then they perform surgery on a stuffed animal they have there, and then they decide that they've lost the patient, so they behead it. And yeah. So then it's later, and they're in a carriage with their mother, and they're just going through the forest, and the Baron is yelling at his assistant, Otto, who, and it's really funny to hear the Baron talk in this film, because the actor who portrays him, Udo Kier, I believe his name is, he, like, I forget all I know, like really the only things I know about him are that he's a very big kind of like actor when it comes to, like, you know, B movies and like campy movies. Like, he's really well known for his campy acting, and his acting here is very, very campy. Also, the accent he puts on to pull off like a Serbian kind of accent, it's almost Tommy Wiseau from The Room, like levels of bad accent, and that is beautiful, because it makes every scene with him very memorable. Not very quotable. Most, you know, there are quite a few scenes that have quotes, that have lines in them that are very quotable, but it's still really entertaining. So like I said, the acting in this movie is pretty decent all around. Everybody turns in at least a halfway decent performance. But Udo Kier, his performance is probably the most entertaining out of all of them. He makes the character of Baron Frankenstein a lot more entertaining and likable, than really any of the other characters in the movie. There's like Otto, his assistant, there's the Baron's children, there's the Baroness, who is also Baron Frankenstein's sister. You know, there are quite a few characters here. They're not the most complex, but in a film like this, I don't think they need to be. The makeup effects in this movie are probably the best, not the best part of it, but definitely one of the highlights of the film. The makeup effects are pretty damn good, but the gore effects are really, really cheesy. Like, really, really cheesy. Like, I want to say almost, like, Pieces level of cheesy, or it reminded me of Dawn of the Dead, even though the gore in that movie isn't like cheesy. Like the gore in that film is great. It's just that the blood is like bright red because it's supposed to look like a comic book, and that's kind of what goes on here. The blood is like bright red, and it looks like red paint. But I don't have a complaint. I don't want to complain about that because I think it gives the film a bit more of a kind of like Hammer horror style. I say that having not seen many Hammer horror films, only like a few clips. But while on the topic of Hammer horror films, this film has a lot in common with them. Like it has very nice, kind of elaborate castle sets, and it has a very Hammer kind of look and feel to it. It feels like one of the Hammer horror films from the 70s. But since the movie, has a very serious tone, and it has this kind of kind of Hammer feel to it, it makes the campy scenes and the campy moments in the film and everything, like the campy elements of the film, just makes it all the more. It makes the movie all the more ridiculous and entertaining. The lighting and sound mix are good. The camera work is nice. The film's well shot. The music is nice. It's kind of eerie at times. The film does have a nice atmosphere, but it does get ruined by the fact that the film is omega beyond, just extremely cheesy and campy. The film isn't boring. I would definitely say there are pacing issues with it, but it's not a boring movie. It's got something going on to keep you interested or entertained throughout the entire thing, and I'm not gonna lie, I was focused on this film the entire time because they keep throwing like these kind of weird, quirky curveballs at you with different characters and different like subplots and all this other stuff, and it really comes together nicely in a nice, like, cheesy, fun package. On the gore meter from 1 to 10, 1 being something like Nosferatu, and 10 being something like Brain Dead. Flesh for Frankenstein is probably about a 5.5. There's a lot of over-the-top gore here, and when I say over-the-top, I mean it's like so bad and over-the-top that you can't help but giggle at it a lot when you see it. Now, while this film is another adaptation of the classic horror story, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it still has enough going on and enough things to make it different from the original story, to the point that it's not really an adaptation of it as much as it is like a partially inspired by, and then it's its own thing of really weird and I don't want to say surreal, but like weird and perverse kind of. It's Frankenstein. It's like a combination of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, how it's like perverse, and like how it's really perverse and stuff, and then it's a combination of that and the classic Frankenstein, how the classic Frankenstein was very dark and eerie, and it really shows it off so well. I think it gets the kind of style of it being like, hey, we're being serious, like, hey, look, this is like trying to be serious, but it's also a very quirky, perverse, kind of gross, like, accidental comedy, and I absolutely adore this film because of it. I will say that it's not the best, version or like different adaptation of Frankenstein that I've ever seen. It's definitely not that, but as far as originality goes, when it comes to, adapting like a classic story and putting a twist on it, this is definitely one of the better ones that I've seen. I'd probably have to give this one a 4 out of 5. I really, really enjoyed it.